For over 40 years, SCM
has been the voice of our town,
bringing us together through local programming,
education,
and live broadcasts.
SCM isn't just about television.
It's about empowering our community,
ensuring our voices are heard during government meetings,
and celebrating milestones
like our high school graduations.
But today, SCM faces a challenge.
Our funding structure is based on television subscriptions.
And it's no secret, people have been cutting the cord.
With a shift to internet-only subscriptions,
SCM receives less revenue,
even though all our programming is freely available online.
We need your support.
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 Your donation can make a difference.
It will ensure that SCM remains open,
continues to educate our youth,
and keeps our community informed.
Thanks to SCM, I've been honing my creative skills, helping me work towards my college degree.
SCM is crucial for keeping our community connected.
SCM isn't just here to broadcast local events. They're actually preserving Simsbury's history.
Join us.
Join us in preserving Simsbury's voice.
Simsbury's voice.
Together we can ensure that SCM continues to thrive
for generations to come.
Visit our website
or scan the QR code on your screen to make your donation.
Every contribution
counts.
Thank you for supporting Simsbury Community Media,
where your town,
your schools,
and your government
come together.
Let's start with the Pledge of Allegiance. As always, pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty, and justice. Okay, great. Thank you. Both audience? Yes. Ready? Great. Go to committee reports and communications with Macy.
Okay, so this month, all the elementary schools have been participating in their musical theater and concert performances. On Friday, December 13th, all schools are participating in the CCMC's PJ Day to fight childhood cancer. Leading up to break, Henry James will have their volleyball game, and all the schools will start their spirit weeks leading up to break. On December 12th, Henry James is hosting a parent education series on internet safety, which is intended for 7th through 12th graders. And at the high school, we had our award ceremony on December 4th, recognizing Simsbury scholars, AP students, and National Merit Award winners. And then the music department will be performing on the 18th and the 11th, coming out to.
Thank you.
No, just wish everyone a happy holidays. Oh, that's fantastic.
It's a
quick window.
Thank you. Yeah, very quick window. I attended the Cape Caps conference in November, and we had about 600 of our attendees, of our fellow colleagues and superintendents that attended, and it was a jam-packed conference, and we passed about 20 resolutions. They're going to be our working document when session starts in Connecticut on January 8th. So we will be up there. So it was a very, very, very busy time, but we got a lot of work ahead of us. As I said, January 8th is the start of the General Assembly here. I'm senior moment of the new co-chair of the Education Subcommittee that was just named recently. That will be serving as you know, Jeff Curry did not run this year. So there's going to be a lot going on in January. It's an early session, so we start, and we're going to be moving forward very, very quickly. Some of the big issues, now these are the legislative issues, not necessarily out of Ed Committee, but it's that 119,000 commission, which I spoke to you about underserved students, young people in Connecticut, special ed task force, and high school graduation requirement working groups. So these are just a couple of the working groups, more to come, and some of the working groups have never even met within the past year. So we're hoping that they'll meet again. There was also the School and State Finance Project had a very big press conference. It's kicking off in New Haven recently, coming up, starting now for the beginning of the legislative session. So that is also, it's a webinar, and you can also, Google it and find out where it's from. So those are some of the other things that have been going on. It's going to be a busy time. We also had a big webinar for National School Board Association in terms of what's going on federally in D.C. And right now it's a lame duck session. As you know, Linda McMahon will probably be confirmed as the Secretary of Education. So, we're going to continue our efforts, our advocacy efforts for Title I, increase the IDEA funding, strengthening Title I and Title II. So we've got a lot of work ahead of us. Moving on, and also fighting the vouchers is going to be a big thing that we are going to have to spend a lot of time on. And because, as you know, the private schools would benefit if it does pass. It hasn't passed in Connecticut, but a lot of states are going to be pushing it. So it's going to be a very big year in D.C. I will be there at the end of January, and we will start the advocacy effort down there. And then I'll put out a plea to you, as we have all our colleagues around the country, before we get on the Hill and meet with all our congressional delegation, is if you think of specific challenges or issues that are affecting your communities, by all means, call me, talk to me, because we need to bring this forward to our congressional delegation. As you know, our 6th congressional delegation from Connecticut, we have very close connections with. So these are things that we want to bring forward to them. So that's what's going on. It's going to move fast, and we'll all have to be part of it, and keep that advocacy hat on for public education.
Thank you. Chair?
Just Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays to everyone and those that are traveling. Get there safely, and to the students, enjoy that time off.
Jeff?
What's that?
Jeff?
I'm going to do a shout out to my friend Macy Gets There. I run Simsbury Celebrates, and we have volunteers. We need volunteers in many spots, and she has a app that's Volunteens, and she wonderfully supported us in having a lot of your friends or your fellow students hit very, very specific and helpful spots. So thank you so much for being available to us. It was very helpful.
Yes, great.
It's very, very cool. She's been doing it for... Macy, tell them about it.
Yeah.
It's a group. It's not run through the school. Other schools like students from Ethel and Loomis help with it too. But just with local organizations who needs help, they can reach out to me. I have like a website and a separate email, and then I just get students together. I send out like an invitation if people want it, because I know like a lot of people look for hours too for National Honor Society and other honor societies and things like that. It just helps the community and like those smaller like events and organizations too that don't normally like get those volunteers too.
Great job.
Amazing.
Yes. Good job.
Oh, and also, that was my fun part. So we had a curricular meeting this morning, and we spoke about, we had 3 topics. We talked about the capstone. We had a review of the capstone. It's in its 3rd year, and it seems to be getting better every year. And it was nice to see how supportive we are of our students and the various opportunities and pathways to get to your capstone and finish. And it would be great if more juniors started it. I think it would be very helpful. So we'll see. It was great to hear the whole where they're at and where they've come from. We discussed AI. Dave Prinstein spoke to us about AI, and we're very involved in it. There is a committee at the school district level who are watching it carefully, and they're looking at responses and things to resources that they can use that they have kind of found that would be helpful to teachers as resources and students as resources, and always keeping in mind, everyone's going to be held accountable. It's not used to take the place of your work. It's used to enhance and help you in your work. And there's a way to there's a fine line, and it's coming fast. So I'm glad we're watching it carefully and keeping an eye on it, and hoping to make it a positive thing. We also spoke about, we got feedback on the Vision of Graduate and how it's assessed in the schools, and how the students are becoming aware of different opportunities for learning Vision of the Graduate pieces within the actual core curriculum. And so students are being made aware of where they're being put into the curriculum, and the feedback is to the students individually and to the teachers as far as how it's all going, and that's new. So that'll take a couple of years to really sound itself out, but it's important to us to make sure people are getting it in the classrooms.
Right. Can see a question, and I'm not really sure who. Just on the AI piece, right? And we're going to be dealing with this. This is just we're going to be dealing with this a lot very soon, I think. But our focus seems to be on students, right? The students' usage of
Actually,
the
that's
adults.
that's
that's exactly where I was going.
it's more the adults than the students.
Great, tools. Perfect.
It's definitely tools and and to create a comfort level.
Great. No, that's kind of exactly what I was starting to say. Actually, that's great.
Great. Just as a reminder, we have an early release day tomorrow, Wednesday, December 11th. There's some great professional learning going on at all levels of the organization. So thank you for that. And just a reminder for planning.
So our last meeting was on the night of the ribbon cutting at Latimer Lane School. But I want to highlight 4 days later on Saturday morning, our open house for the community was a resounding success. We had Mr. Luzetti went back later because, you get to an event like that and everybody's guessing, like, how many people do you think came through here? And it ranged from, maybe 300 to, maybe 400 people. And Mike Luzetti went back on the camera by the front door and played it through and counted how many people came through. And it was nearly 600 people that came through for our open house from 10 to 1. We were the perfect hosts because if you currently have kids in the school system, you know Mr. Luzetti. If you have adult children in the community, you knew me and were able to connect again. And people, the highlight, everybody who came through at the end commented about how wonderful it was 10 stations. So they went to the gym and a 6th grader met them there and had 2 minutes to talk about the gym, and then the media center. They went to a kindergarten classroom, and everybody was like, those 6th graders were amazing. So it was a self-guided tour. You started it in that lobby, and the feedback was fabulous. So it was a really good idea, and maybe that'll be the end of my Latimer Lane updates. I've been doing them for 2 years now, but it was a great celebration.
That's great. Great for the kids.
Just a quick reminder, the tri-board is tomorrow night at the public library at 7 p.m.
Thanks. Nothing at this gate. I don't have any.
All set? No, great. I'm good shape.
Great. First on the agenda is the approval of the November 12th meeting minutes. The minutes of the meeting, so I'll try and say.
So I make a motion to approve the minutes.
Second.
Great. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Great. The bargaining unit?
That's Neil.
Yep, Neil.
Yes. So this is actually a new situation where our security guards, we have 4 security guards at Simsbury High School. We have 1 at Henry James. And in the spring, they made a decision that they would like to unionize. So they went through a process with the Connecticut State Labor Board. They voted to form a union, which kicked in our obligation to collectively bargain with them. So normally these bargaining units are what you call successor agreements to the previous contract. So this is the first ever contract that we've negotiated with this small group of employees. Financially it's 5 people. It's not an enormous contract. And with the assistance of Ms. Lemke, who was part of the process with me, we, in good faith, negotiated with them and just reached an agreement a few weeks ago. So what you can see here, they signed their paperwork to become a formal group in the spring, and therefore our negotiations start based on July 1st of 2024. So we're actually kind of 5 months past. This is going to be a little bit retroactive. They have not yet gotten a pay raise for this year. until we approve this agreement. So there was a slight wage adjustment based on the research of neighboring communities of $500 to begin the process. And then you can see under number 2 of the exhibit, the wage increases, which were a 2.5 general wage increase in this current year, which will be awarded retroactively to July 1st, a 3% for next year, and then a 2.5% in the third year of the contract. Those of you who are part of the Personnel and Negotiations Committee are familiar with the moves we've been taking to cost contain with medical benefits. All the things we've done with the other groups, we also did with this group to do some of that pharmacy and medical management cost savings, and their premium share is comparable with other groups in this wage level. Typical that we have some life insurance and long-term disability. We based because this is also a NAGE group, we based this contract off of our custodial contract because it's the same representatives from NAGE, and that's what they asked to do. And then lastly, this was a group that one of their issues was the illness days. They had very few illness days awarded to them when they were unaffiliated. We increased that. I can tell you it would have needed to be increased anyway because you're going to start to hear something called the Connecticut Paid Sick Leave Act that comes into place on January 1st. So these were there's going to be a need for employers to provide more sick time. We would have needed to provide more sick time to this group of employees anyway. This is where we landed in terms of a negotiation that they would be granted 10 sick days per year. So process started slowly. We picked up steam at the end because everybody wanted to get this done before the holidays. They have already ratified. So your vote tonight will allow us to put in motion their retroactive pay.
Yeah, just a quick question.
Sure.
Tomorrow's the tri board, and I'm sure we'll be asked. Just comfort level on the rate increases, consistent with other towns.
Yeah, within 1/10 of a point of where we are with the other groups.
Great.
And just he's not here, but I do want to mention that on these non-certified negotiations, I do keep Brian Watson up to date about what's happening. So he's, as the chair of the Personnel and Negotiations Committee, he is kept in the loop about kind of what our progress is. So, and Brian was aware that where we were with this group.
Yeah, so I know you said that it's the security guard staff.
Yeah.
Different. So I guess where I'm going is, this. You said this aligns with what group was it that you said?
So NAGE, which stands for the National Association of Government Employees,
okay,
is the organizing labor group.
Okay.
And so the same representative from NAGE who represents our custodians represented this small group.
Okay. And so that's where you're saying you align everything pretty much to that.
Yes.
Because that's okay. Because I was looking at some of the plans.
He asked for that because that's the one Simsbury contract he's familiar with.
Yeah. Yeah.
He's not familiar with our other.
Yeah. Okay. That's all right.
Questions? Anyone? Is the motion in the packet then?
Yes.
Someone?
I will. I move that the Board of Education ratify the proposed changes in the collective bargaining agreement between Simsbury Board of Education and the National Association of Governmental Employees, Local R1245, for the period of July 1, 2024 through June 30th, 2027.
Second.
Great. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Great. Thank you. Capital improvement.
All right, yeah, I'll take that one. We had an opportunity at our last meeting to discuss the recommendations for the 25-26 capital plan. And at that time, Jason took us through two recommendations. One was to, and we went through this with the Finance Committee as well, to move out, which was a $2.2 million project, the Henry James roof. Roof right now still in decent shape. We could buy some time in the overall context of what we know will be a challenging budget this year. Kind of looking forward to how we can free up capacity maybe for other more urgent things we need to do. So Jason recommended we were able to move that out. The other piece was a field reconfiguration at Simsbury High, the practice fields. We had a quote in kind of a vision of redoing and maximizing the practice space there so we could align practice times a little more effectively for kids right after school, get them home. The pricing on that, the updated pricing, more than doubled the cost of that, really out of an abundance of those ADA requirements that weren't really after the spirit of what we were trying to do with the fields. You know, so with the dollars that we were quoted, we thought it was best to put that on pause, come back next year when we know that a focus of this board is to really relook at our 6-year capital planning, reprioritize, and go through that exercise in great detail. So there may be some other configuration we can do with the fields or look at a second way to maximize capacity. So the recommendation was to move that out as well. There are 2 items that remain that we feel, while the dollars are not overly significant, it has quite a positive impact in the district. We go every other year on district security improvements. So we would want to keep those dollars there, and that would largely be to, for our camera upgrades, door and fob upgrades, to keep that going. If we fall behind that, it's not something we really can make up in a timely fashion. The other was our strategy. We started it last year in capital to move other kind of smaller items that used to be in CNR, group them together over the threshold of $250,000, put them in capital. We were able to do a lot of flooring and painting last year at our schools as a result of that. We want to rotate that with this year, which is a category for like paving, line striping, and painting. We have a lot of damaged concrete pavement that we need to start to get ahead of and get a proactive plan on. So we want to keep that in as well. So the year one total for us is $850,000, with the recognition that we've moved out over $3 million in year one, which we'll certainly share if this is to get approved tomorrow night as part of the conversation at the tri-board. I think it's an important piece of the puzzle.
I just want to emphasize what you just said, actually, because it can't be said enough, especially as we're going into budget season. Right out of the gate, this board has recognized the fiscal realities out there in the town, on the taxpayer, and the pressures there, and we've taken $3 million off the table. I just want to say that again. We've taken $3 million off the table. So I think that's that's great. That's great. Any questions from that?
I think there's a motion.
Great. There's a motion in the packet.
I'll move that the Board of Education Capital Improvement Plan for the 2025-2026 school year be approved as presented. I'll second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Great. Acceptance of the gift from R&D Dynamics Corps.
Yes, so in keeping with your policy, any gifts from the public in excess of $1,500 require your approval. And we are in the holiday season, so there are 3 gifts for your consideration and approval tonight. The first one is to the Simsbury High School robotics team, bless you, from R&D Dynamics Corporation. In the amount of $3,000, and this gift is to be used by the robotics team for supplies and any expenses incurred. So there is a motion there for your consideration.
Fantastic.
I move that the pros gift to the SHS Robotics Club in the Simsbury High School from R&D Dynamics Corporation totaling $3,000 be approved.
Second.
Great. Any discussion?
Thank you very, very much. That's great.
Yeah, so there's always just a big amount of thanks. So,
It's a great program.
Great.
It's very cool.
all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Great.
The second gift is from an anonymous donor, and it's in the amount of $2,000 to be used at Terrafield School for supporting holiday activities for Terriffill families.
Nice.
That's big.
Very nice. And
there's a motion for consideration.
So good.
Move that the proposed gift of $2,000 from an anonymous donor to Terriffill School be approved.
Second.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Very nice.
Very generous.
Whoever you are, anonymous donor, we greatly appreciate that.
Happy holidays to you, for sure.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
And the third gift this evening is to Simsbury High School from the Simsbury Community and Social Services. It's for the amount of $2,500, and it will be used to install additional vape detectors in the high school, which have been found to be very helpful.
Great. Excellent.
Move that the proposed gift of $2,500 to Simsbury High School by Simsbury Community and Social Services be approved.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Great.
Jason.
I'm happy to report that both roof projects have been completed. The Public Building Committee has approved their completion. We've received the as-built paperwork and warranties, and now bring it to you officially. Approval is closed. There's two motions for you for that. And that allows us to move on to accept grant reimbursements.
Can we read them together, or do we need to take them individually? Separately. I've got the signatures. Yeah, good.
So the complete meaning that the roofs have been done, or?
Yes.
Okay, and then, and the warranty is standard 30 years, like everybody else?
Yeah.
Okay, that was just it.
Great.
I wasn't clear if it was going to grant, or was it done? Meaning stick a fork in it, done.
Roofs are done.
Okay.
All we do is
That's right. I'll make a motion. Great. So move that the Simsbury Board of Education accepts as complete the re-roofing and related work at Terriffill Elementary School Project 128-0112 RR and authorizes the acceptance of the school building grades.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Any opposed?
Second one is move that the Simsbury Board of Education accepts as complete the re-roofing and related work at Central Elementary School Project 128-0113 RR and authorizes the acceptance of the school building grants.
Second.
Great. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Next is B, right? Yep. In your packet is the meeting schedule for 2025. I will point out before asked that you'll see the locations are all here. We're trying to rework what works best in the schools and what's not, and so we'll just kind of stay tuned for that. Some of these locations may change, but so we just wanted to obviously put the conference room as the place, certainly at least a placeholder. Any questions on the meeting schedule? It's great.
I noticed it. I was glad you asked. I figured.
Yeah.
More to come.
Move the Board of Education set their 2025 meeting schedule as outlined in the December 10th, 2024 board exhibit.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thanks.
Set this up.
Flash to it.
Sure, and then I'll pick up where you leave off.
Looking forward to this next discussion. Most of you are aware of what's coming. I just wanted to say that obviously this comes out of what we're about to talk about. Is we came out of the workshop in the spring, and even really before that, we've given the directive to the administration as a board to kind of we need to wrap our arms around the rapidly escalating costs in the special education world. A lot out of our control, but that was the directive. I'm really excited about, like I said, about this conversation because I think they've come back with a very innovative concept that will benefit the town financially as well as education. Delivering a great education closer to home, right? Because a lot of times we've talked about the tuition of out of districts and the skyrocketing nature of those. So hopefully this program will address those. But so looking forward to the conversation. Other towns that have tried this and have these programs, and looking forward to a robust conversation on this proposal.
Great. So I'm going to invite Katie Crisula up to the table. She's going to present kind of the vision of the program, and Amy's going to weigh in a little bit on the financial modeling. But we've been up to quite a bit over the past several months on this since we had the discussion at our workshop. We've researched several different properties. We've come up with what was a recommendation, and have had an opportunity, the three of us, to sit in on 2 executive sessions with the Board of Selectmen, share the vision for the program, talk about, at the end of the day, one property in particular that we felt would benefit in the program, our staff, and the students the most. That is the Farms Village Road property next to Simsbury High School. So we have an overview to share with you tonight in terms of just process. It's an interesting one, right? Because the purchase of a property involves all 3 of the main boards, right? It involves us in terms of identifying a need and trying to get the other boards to understand. The Board of Selectmen would have to be the first to approve the purchase of a property. That would then go to the Board of Finance for final approval. So we've been encouraged by both boards to continue to move forward up to this point. The property is in active price negotiations right now. So obviously that's all confidential information that gets shared in executive session. Won't be talking about specifics of cost right now. The Board of Selectmen on their agenda in January have this same conversation. And if that goes in a positive direction, we would move the conversation to the Board of Finance also in January, where they would hold a public hearing and allow the public to come out with any questions, comments, concerns, anything that we could address publicly. So we'd have an opportunity to kind of share that information all the way around. There was some news media reporting on this topic. It was the result of when the Board of Selectmen referred this motion to, I believe it was planning, and attached the packet. So it was simply they got the packet that was shared in the executive session and kind of wrote a summary of it. It was actually a pretty good summary of the program, pretty detailed. But we wanted to come out and share that information with you this evening. As you mentioned, Jeff, have a conversation and answer questions that you have. But, we mentioned early on, Lydia, you mentioned legislatively the task force for special education. We know early planning, and they've shared with superintendents some of the focus from the State Board of Education is to potentially incentivize districts to move in this direction, because the cost of these services privately out of district have really escalated beyond our ability to negotiate. So I feel like we're a little half step ahead of the game that could benefit us as that information comes down the pike, but that's something else that's going on. I guess it's aligned with not only our board's directive, but what the state's looking at as well. So I will turn it over to you guys.
So thank you for the opportunity to come and just talk really about what our thoughts are. There are details in the slide that I probably won't go into it at length, because I'd really like to be able to answer any questions and really just provide you that high leverage thought around what we see kind of this taking shape as we move forward around providing some in-district pupil services programming. So again, want to kind of walk through some of the historical facts and around the needs, points that you're very familiar with. A bit around what's our vision and our purpose to this, some ideas around the initial build out. This is, again, a lot of this is dependent on when we would get space in order to really take shape, but wanted to put forward how might this look when we get space, and how might we use current resources and then strategically and in a timely and appropriate manner add on to. And then Amy's here to really talk through those budget pieces in regards to cost containment and some potential for savings. And then lastly, just want to end with a very, very successful proven approach from Farmington Valley Transition Academy, something you guys as a board are very familiar with, and talk about how that is similar to what we're proposing here. okay? Again, as if you have questions, please, you have the slides. I won't be reading directly from them. If you have questions, please let us know as we go through this. So again, why are we talking about this? And Matt referenced the conversations from last year. This has been a theme throughout our last few years in regards to the increases of tuitions for out-of-district students, as well as the transportation costs, and they're not in their community, right? A lot of those needs are based on the increasing complexity of our students. And so we looked at the data. I really took a hard look at who are our students, what are their needs, and we have a significant cohort of students that require supports around complex emotional disabilities and behavior. There's some data in there that we currently have 9 students that are out grades 2-8 that are placed in a neighboring town approved private special education program. And then we have 3 high school students that are placed across the greater Hartford area. And there are 3 students currently over at Farmington Valley Diagnostic Center. And they all have similar needs and profiles, but at the end of the day, they all have a complex behavioral need that can be addressed potentially in town. So looked at also in our research, kind of what do we have currently? We do have a Pathways program at Simsbury High School. This is, really been developed over the years to support students at the high school within that environment of Simsbury High School. And some of those students have needed additional supports and had to be placed out of district because of the location and what that program can support at the high school setting. So really took a look at what is the vision and the purpose of Pathways and how might we grow upon that in the development of an in-district program here in Simsbury at a different location or a different space. And so really kind of expanded on that and provided you with some thought around a vision and a purpose to an in-district behavioral program. I think the big component of this is how do we create a community-based environment, or the goal is to create a community-based environment that supports students' needs and the complexity of their needs in their own town, in their environment, in their community, being able to provide appropriate bridges back to their home schools, being able to provide access to activities that they're familiar with. And that's a really an important part of this proposal that I think is exciting for our students. I've had an opportunity to visit, successful district-based behavioral programs. And one of the key components is making it that community and making it a place where students feel a part of something in their own town, and it's not a separate place where students are that doesn't have that feel. Okay. Again, just another, we've talked a little bit about this. Matt referenced the state's initiative around really allowing districts or incentivizing districts to think differently around their in-district programming. For us, it really makes sense in this area because it does allow for additional financial control and planning. We would know what those supports are, what the needs are, and really budget around that. Versus with our out-of-district tuitions right now, we don't have say. In fact, there is legislation that's going to be discussed where they're going to ask these approved private special ed programs to give tuitions as soon as by budget season. We don't currently get those updated tuition rates until the summer, and we're doing our budget now. So that's difficult for districts, and it's been difficult for us. It's been something we've talked about over the last few years. So it gives us that ability to budget and to support students, but also from a fiscally responsible way. It also allows us to train our own staff, to build our own capacity, to have experts and consultants, to have liaisons and bridges between the environments with which students are supported, whether that be able to have bring a voice into our current buildings, but also to have colleagues and collaboration that can happen because we're building these experts within our own district. So it's and again, one of the things we looked at is the fact that we have so many students in one concentrated environment currently. And that's where, when we looked from a financial lens, it makes sense to look at this area. I'm going to take, Amy and I will now take you through what are our proposed phases of programming. How might this build out over a series of years? It's not something we can do overnight. It's something we need to be strategic about and make sure that this continues to be what's right for students and what makes sense from a financial standing. And so, again, there are 3 phases outlined. Again, a lot of this is dependent on when we would get space, when we would get property, and then it's taking a look at this and then saying, okay, what is the actual next step? But this gives a really good idea of how this makes sense, both from a programmatic and educational lens, as well as how it makes sense from a financial lens. So we'll kind of walk you through those. And this is what the article kind of summarized very well. So phase 1, we would look to really move in with current resources, taking students from current programming and needs that we have and staffing, and supporting them in a very close environment, and being able to build exemplar into that program, expand the vision work, really talk about the criteria for entrance and exit from a behavior program, and work to start to market the fact that we have space, that we have this plan to grow our staff, that we have planned, and really be able to talk to that both of some neighboring towns, but also with our families of our students that are currently outplaced, of why it may, again, it has to make sense for that student, may make sense for them through the PPT process.
So Katie, do you want us to hold our questions till you get to the end?
I'm okay if you have questions during that we can can kind of talk to.
So I want to just go back, because you mentioned, I think it was a total of 13 students.
It's 16 with the diagnostic students.
Okay, because I think you said 15. 15. Yeah. Because I really don't right. So would those be the ones that would come back first? That's
again, I think it all has to be individual conversations around those student needs. This is a pocket of profiles that we are seeing a need that we cannot currently support in district. It doesn't mean that there aren't going to be students that have similar needs, and that we have students that have really made some successes in their out-of-district placements that might be looking to bridge back into district. So to say that all 15, that's a difficult question to answer, because those decisions need to be made individually through the planning and placement team process. But this is a profile that we do not currently have a program for, that the state is saying districts need to look at building their programs to get kids back into district and support their kids as they start to struggle.
Yes. Good question.
Okay, thank you. Okay, talk a little to the budget and the numbers here.
Sure. So currently, if you will, the special ed gross budget about 17 million, just shy of 17,500,000. Phase 1, we're utilizing current staff, the students in the pathway. So there is no change to our special ed gross budget in that year 1, and we're just moving over our pathways program into the note building. We're still going to have our special education gross budget in our operating budget as it currently exists. And then on top of that, we have the tentative building purchase and any renovations and cost updates to that. I just want to reiterate what Matthew said. That is not a negotiated price. Those conversations are happening in executive session. That price is put up there prior to even authorizing negotiations. So I don't want you to think that is a finalized price. We have a placeholder of about $50,000 to operate the building, supplies, utilities, things of that nature. And then we have a loss of tax revenue since it will come off the tax rolls as it's now town property. So that loss to the town will be about $14,000. So the initial cost to the district, not adding any tuitioned-in students, not bringing any tuitioned-in students back into district, our year one cost will be about $1.6 million under this scenario.
That's the estimate, right?
Yep.
Right. So
High level.
Right. Wait, say estimate because you don't know even what your updates are going to be.
Right.
Right. So.
We have a good handle on them. We have had our public works department, our facilities department, and I believe an engineer and architect in there. So we have a very good handle on them.
So, I mean, is it a reason why the updates weren't separated out if you have a really good, you know what I mean? Because the building purchase is one
I think more of like not giving too much away.
Yeah.
Since we are in negotiations, we don't want them to see what we're using for a price estimate.
Okay, that's true. That's when you buy and sell, that's right.
It's the complication, a little bit of the three boards being involved in this and trying to share enough information, but not too much.
Not too much.
Yep.
Yeah. So then my question then is, does this come, I think you said that it will come back to us, right? Was this, once we have this?
Yep, so as we play through these three phases, and I think it's important, and I'm not trying to convolute the conversation, but it's important to understand as well, and Katie referenced it, the phases we laid out, this goes back to the summer, when initially it was like, hey, if we can figure this out, we could open the year this way. There are different ways to look at these phases, but this is a way to look at it that establishes we have time that's really cost neutral from an operating budget standpoint the first year, and then we build the second year. Because while it says initial cost to the district, yes, that's true, we don't actually pay for that out of our operating budget. That's the discussion, and the Board of Finance has the final call on where they would levy those funds from. You know what I mean, Sharon? So, but we're putting all the cost out there in the assessment saying, yes, this is our idea. It's cost to the district.
Yeah, and I was only asking questions because I do remember that conversation that we had back in the summer. We were talking about, just high level, and the possibility of updates and all that kind of stuff. So I was just kind of going back to that.
Okay. Okay. So phase two, as we mentioned, is kind of how we start to build out and start to really see the program take shape. The thought, again, just initial thinking and giving you a good idea of what this might look like is at that point, then we have kind of two classrooms in the property. One is your continuation of your high school or your secondary model, and one would start our elementary program. Again, utilizing current staff potentially for one classroom, and then starting to add both your services and your additional staffing to kind of really create that community. Year two is where I would see that community starting to take shape. It's going to feel like a school. It's got to feel like a place where students feel safe and successful and supported. And that at that point, we would really look to who might be some kids that are ready, that they're out of districts, that their teams, their families are feeling like a step back into the community is the right step for that kid. And then we would also look at what are other towns, because other towns are in very similar situations where us, where they have increased complexity of kids and needs and nowhere to necessarily put them. And so if we can be that resource, there might be an opportunity to bring in 1 to 2 tuitions that first year and really then do the work with our educators to create those exemplars and to create the training and that community that I referenced. Okay. And then from a budget, it gets a little bit more of an impact here. Yep. So our operating budget for this year, say hypothetically fiscal year 26, if we did not have this program, our estimated budget would be just shy of that $18,449,000. That is built-in cost escalation related to the last 2 years of budgets, where we've seen tuition increases anywhere from 7% to 18%. So we use just an estimate of about 10% in tuition costs. We did a similar exercise related to the transportation, and then we just looked at the salary increases, supplies, things of that nature. We added cost escalation to all of those items, and we came up with an estimate of about that 18.4. Now, if we have the program and we're able to bring back those 4 students that were on the previous slide, we were able to bring them back into district, into our new program, our revised budget would be about just over 18 million. So this would generate savings to our operating budget of about 438,000. I don't like to call it savings. I like to call it cost containment because we do have to pay for the program. So then in a separate fund outside of our operating budget, we'll be tracking the program revenues as well as the program expenditures. So that year one, if we had 1 student tuition in, our tuition rate would be $70,000 and we get $70,000 in income. Our estimated expenditures with our new staffing costs, supplies, things of that nature is estimated at about $520,000. So you take your $70,000 minus in your revenue minus your expenditures of $520,000, and you have a deficit in the program budget of $450,000. You're going to take your savings in your operating budget. You're going to subtract out your deficit in your program budget, and then we have an overall deficit of $11,000. So we're almost break even that first year, bringing those 4 students back and having 1 tuition in. Now, if we were able to get that second tuition, you're already in a cost containment surplus.
I was gonna kind of ask that, was there anything magical about just the 1 tuition?
I think it's just making
Still trying to be
sure we're wanting to really make sure that we don't everything I'm hearing is slow is the right way, right? So it's making sure that we need to do this right for kids so it's successful. And when we talk about FETA, here's a program that's 25 years of time and success. We need to do it right, and so not rushing it. But if we found 2 students and those profiles matched and their districts needed a home and we felt confident, absolutely, and then those dollars go to a different cost containment process.
That's a good question. They're obviously all hypothetical, but I see what, right, like, I appreciate the conservatism, but, right, 2 tuitions showing up 60 above, right? But also slow and steady. But if you were to, the first time you bring a student in, this is your expertise, and you're trying to create a baseline, lessons learned, what you can take from it. If you were to bring in 2 students, right? Am I missing something? It feels like you're less dependent on just that one individual experience for like true what worked, what did you go to the family, you kind of like what's working, what's not working. 1 student, you're really, and I appreciate slow and steady, but 2, you kind of not just flip that number, but you also have maybe your baseline's less single case dependent. Any thoughts there?
Yeah, so this is 1 tuition student, meaning a student from another town or district. We would certainly be looking at the total experience of our other students in the program that are Simsbury students. I think to your point, it would be nice in order to try to get to 2. I think that would be the goal, because again, let's say that student makes significant progress and is ready to move back, or that student moves from the town that's sending them, and all of a sudden it creates a little bit of a nice not only from experience and drawing from that, but also the ability to make sure that we can, from a budget standpoint, be as responsible as possible.
That's what, Josh, to your point, right? Like, this is malleable, right? There is, our initial thought was current programming, bring our kids back, phase 3 tuition kids. But if we're in a decent place with staffing and feel confident with things, you can move all those around.
Yep.
Is 70,000 the estimated tuition really what you're thinking is, or is this just a placeholder? Because I thought on the other slide the tuition we're paying was 90,000 or 90 and change.
So I've done a little research of both approved private special ed programs, and that is what we are currently paying, right around that. I think it's 96,200, and that includes transportation, and some public in-district programs and what they charge for a tuition. That $70,000 is competitive for the Valley for a public in-district program that can provide that, and it will allow us to be a little bit more marketable of a program that can do what some of our approved private special ed programs do, but at a little bit of a cost savings to another district, if that makes sense. So it is
researched based on both public programs and those approved privates, and really trying to make ourselves competitive in the Valley for public, but also making sure that it's appropriate to what we would see it providing.
Does that number include transportation?
The transportation would be on the sending district.
Oh, I see. Okay.
So the sending district would be responsible to pay the district, Simsbury, the tuition, and to get their student there.
Okay. So Katie, when you talk about looking at other programs, are you familiar with the program that was announced by Bloomfield?
I have not been able to visit Bloomfield. I know their director and previous director very well. So certainly as we move in this direction, that is something that I'd love to discuss more with them.
Okay, because but do you know enough about that they actually hired, like they have a facility or a group that they brought into town to?
There are different consulting groups that can help you with this. That's something that when you get into the specifics of how we see some of the cost of the program, that is something that would be a part of how we build this, is certainly to look to some third-party consultants and experts around how to make sure that we have the right pieces in place and train the people in the best way possible.
And I'm sorry, I'm gonna take a step back because I'm probably the only one that's missing this, but there's kids that are there's about 15 students out of district. There's also a program of students currently at SHS. How many students are those, and those are separate students? Of the 10, how many are those?
So we have about, right now I think we're at 12 students within our Simsbury High School Pathways program. That number vacillates based on some of those students are starting to go back to gen ed classes on a regular basis. So it wouldn't mean that all 12 necessarily come over. Those would also be individualized decisions based on their planning and placement team. But it's the concepts and some of the staffing and what we're able to do that could help us build phase one. Okay.
To that though, because I was thinking as so the 12, again 12, and you have I think 9 on a previous slide for the pathway. When you say they wouldn't all come over, are the two choices? This is all rolling phase one. Is it they either come over or they go into gen ed, or would you have a scenario where pathways is still running at the high school and over here?
I think we have to continue when we get the building to really take a hard look at the needs of the students in that program at that time and make the right decisions by them. We do have some additional programs within Simsbury High School that provide a higher level of support. So we would just look at how do we take our staff that we have right now and support the milieu of students that we have and really make sure that we are making those decisions around those needs. No, it's a good question. So phase 3 is really how do we grow this to full capacity? We see this as very successfully being able to build 4 classrooms, essentially 2 elementary, 1 middle, 1 high, looking at enrollment being between 20 to 25, with up to 10 tuition students, being able to bring back a good amount of our out-of-district students, and then I have on there what full staffing might look like. And that is in addition to the current staff that, bringing over that current staffing that we would use in phase 1. Okay. So from a budget standpoint.
Yeah, so this is what our overall cost containment would look like. It's the same concept. So if you take a look at the operating budget, if we did not have this program, again, an increased cost escalation on all fronts to our budget, we're at about $19,473,000. If we had our estimated budget with the program, we are now down another 6 students in our operating budget that have been returned to district and in our program. So our overall estimated savings to the operating budget is about $1.3 million. And then of course we have to pay for our program. So we go down to our program budget and we are assuming we are at 10 tuitions. So about $700,000 in revenue. The estimated expenditures, which are based on the full staffing that Katie just showed in the previous slide, along with our building costs, supplies, things of that nature. Our overall deficit to the program budget is $751,000. You take the 1.3 in savings in the operating, pay off the deficit to the program budget, and now you have an overall cost containment of $500,000. If this were to come to fruition on a full capacity basis, you will have a return on your investment, a full return on your investment in about 5 years.
Including the property.
Right. That's what I meant by the investment, sorry.
Does the building allow for additions to it to expand the program as it succeeds?
So the next slide really kind of goes into why this property might, it has been identified. Again, we've been into about 4 or 5 different properties, looked at other options. This property does provide adequate space for long-term behavioral program. It has obvious support for 4 classrooms. The downstairs of this offers a nice multi-purpose space that could be used for large groups right away, as well as an additional classroom or small group space. I think, and that's part of the upgrades that we're looking at is, if needed, that downstairs could all become potential classroom space as well. So it does have square footage that could be used to grow the program. It also has open space for those multi-purpose things, but then office space for some of the work that needs to be done in a behavioral program. So those clinical services, individual and independent workspace, time for those conversations that need to happen with individual students. So it really does provide, as it's currently laid out, the ability to not only start the program, but to grow to full capacity and potentially expand. The proximity of the high school is a huge positive because of some just pure logistics of delivery of meals and shared transportation. Also, its central location to town allows us for our in-district students to do that transition work back to a building. Again, our goal is not to say a student is needing that out-of-district or more of a program, self-contained program support long-term. It's let's get them the skills, let's build their skill base, and then how do we get them back to the general education environment as quickly as possible. So it allows us to do that transition work that sometimes is really hard when you have a student that is anywhere from 10 miles away to up to an hour away. So that's also a really nice piece of the proximity of the high school. Again, when we talk about the current pathways model, there's the ability for those students to access gen ed even without transportation from that location. The other thing is, just as Amy mentioned, we've had some of our public works people in to take a look at this. We've had architect and engineer. It is a sound structure. It has good bones, as a layperson would say, and it can. I mean, Matt and I, when we first saw it, we were like, you could open tomorrow. Again, that's not what's going to happen because we have to be able to make sure that it is updated and sound for an educational facility, but it's got those good bones that really you want to look for when you're looking at property.
So on that note, can we see it? Is it open? I mean, is anybody in there?
Well, we had offered prior during the summer several times to people that wanted to go see it, correct? I don't know if we could get in there. I don't know if we could get in there now.
I didn't know that.
I could look into it. Take a quick look. It does certainly help conceptually.
Yeah, that's what I'm like. I'm a visual. I mean, pictures or something. Because I can hear what you're saying, but I can't visualize it.
Yeah. Is the 25 capacity with the 5 classrooms or just 4 classrooms?
I think it's 20 to 25 with the 4. Somewhere between 4 to 6 in each classroom is what I would say is appropriate for that kind of programming and space that is in the property.
I'd say I am so excited about this. I just think it is such a great location. That's the thing, because for some of those kids that you're saying, right, that could go both ways. They could go and do an after-school club or athletics, or to be with the community, with their neighborhood peers.
And I think when I visited some local other towns that do this, one of the biggest
piece that I found why it's important to have the community is a lot of the either non-certified staff that was working in the building, or even just student mentors, were students that had been a part of the program when they were younger, and they get the kids in the program, and they were in there, they were working, they loved to come over as part of their volunteer hours to do work with students in the program. And right now we don't have that connection for our students that require this level of care and support. And to me, it's just like it's helpful to those students that have graduated from a program like this too, to be able to go back and give. So it is exciting.
Question on phase 2, we talked about like the conservatism 1 versus 2. So kind of flip the question to phase 3, right? A lot of that number is banking on tuitions coming in, 10 tuitions. So kind of thinking out again, hypothetical, but can you give us any like feelings, high level, like on the confidence level of being able to obtain 10 tuitions, sustain that, given if the state's telling other towns do this, and as you're looking out and you're kind of counting on that? Just some thoughts there.
So my thought there is, one, you look at it, and even without the tuitions or with 1 or 2 tuitions, we're still pretty much at an even, a break even. The other thing is that takes me right into the proven approach. And I know I don't have to go into this very long, but Farmington Valley Transition Academy as a program, it enrolls tuition paying students from more than 10 districts. If we do it right and we get a good name for what we're doing, we bring the right people in to get us started, we are going to be able to be that pillar in the community of, hey, Simsbury's got this right. We don't need to go to a private program. Let's go see what Simsbury has to offer for our student. So that is, really what we wanted to bring towards you is from a fiscal perspective, as well as just from the program perspective, is Farmington Valley is a very similar model.
And Katie, let me jump in with this. In our research, we certainly talked to other districts, visited other districts. So Glastonbury's had a successful in-house program. There are 27 requests on waiting lists for tuition-paying students for the Glastonbury program. So the same demand, supply and demand challenges because of increased needs that are in the private sector are confronting the public school districts that have been out in front on this. So some of it's a timing thing too.
Yeah, I think something like that speaks volumes. So waiting list 27 kind of tells you kind of.
Okay. So FBTA, I pulled some of our previous data on estimated costs if we didn't have the program compared to what we actually paid. So just starting from the top, fiscal year 19, had we not had the program, estimates of about $953,000 would have been the cost to the district for that program. For those students. Since we had the program, Simsbury only paid $27,000. So our cost containment with FETA is $925,000 in fiscal year 19. As you can see, it's the same theme for each of the rest of the years. So fiscal year 20, we would have paid $630,000 almost. We paid about $30,000. Cost containment of $600,000. So you can see in the good years and the bad years, good economy, bad economy, this approach and this type of program works and helps the district because we get to control the tuition rates, we get to control the costs, and we get to make it advantageous budgetarily based on how we see the program.
Now, you mentioned the Glastonbury program. What's their tuition?
We have it. It's one of the ones that we put into the research. It is it's comparable, a bit less.
Oh, less. Okay.
But in their area, that's kind of the balance that we looked at. So it's competitive and very comparable.
But with 27 kids on a waiting list, it strikes me that we could make our tuition not $96,000 like the private school, but something in between or a little higher. And I know that's a down the road question, but just something to keep in mind. It seems like the demand is so great that we don't need to be low on our pricing to get people in. That's something just to consider down the road.
Well, absolutely, but I do think it's smart just to be conservative.
Oh, absolutely,
Yeah.
100%.
And we've made adjustments over time, absolutely to that same reasoning with FVTA, right? There was a long stretch where we hadn't increased it all, and we had to recalibrate and relook at that, and we're successful in moving that number.
Yeah.
So, yep, understanding the market kind of.
Yeah.
But surrounding, like within the valley, like Avon, Farmington, I include Granby. We're within range.
None of those districts currently have in-district a self-contained program such as this that offer tuitions. So they might have their own self-contained programs, but they don't necessarily offer a tuition. So we looked at Glastonbury, we looked at Ellington, looked at some others further away.
Does Hartford, do they have one?
They have a self-contained in-district program. They aren't currently taking tuition students because they have such a demand. They don't have
but they don't have
of their
to.
own children.
Yeah.
It's their own students.
Yeah.
So they're at capacity with their own kids.
Yeah.
Pretty much, right?
So theirs is more about like the what it costs for them to program in district, kind of that we used in our analysis.
So that is a great strategic approach, like to all the boards and to you now, like to really think like when you're talking budgets, you can nickel and dime little things here and there, try and save a little, 0.1%, 0.2. These are like needle mover type moves. So credit to everyone involved with kind of thinking bigger here, and hopefully it works out.
Absolutely. To echo Josh and Jen, I'm really excited about this, right? We are constantly tasked to push the needle, and as you just said, Josh, and this really does it, and this just feels right? Financially, it seems to make sense. Education-wise, it seems to make sense. We have the model in the Transition Academy. And I just don't think you can discount bringing the kids back in their community.
Yeah.
Think about the minimal or the decrease in stress of the parents alone in knowing that their child is in the district. They don't have to worry about transportation to Massachusetts, or they don't have to worry about what time their child's or where their child is, quite frankly, during the day. So I really just hope all three boards seriously consider this. I hope the public seriously considers this sport, because this will, I think this benefits everybody. Thank you. Really appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I think I'm getting.
You give this to Neil. Yes.
Do you need approval from us to move this to the next board, or we already did that?
It's already there for consideration, and that's the interesting piece. We don't actually have the authority to buy the property.
Right.
So it's.
And we don't need to approve the programming or moving it forward. We're done. I mean, I'm so excited about it.
Yeah, it's a great idea.
Let's hope the other boards get on board.
All right.
NASDAQ
projections.
Yeah. Got a couple presentations that I'm going to try to move through quickly because we knew we had a highlight tonight. So the NASDAQ projections are turned around after the October 1st report. This is always the start of a budget process because the enrollment numbers obviously impact our levels of staffing. This is not the most exciting data because it's very static data.
Yeah.
Okay, so I will move quickly here because there are not a lot of changes. If there was something to talk about this, I would talk about it. But I think we could go pretty quickly.
You do love to.
Yes. So
I'm with you, Neil.
Thanks.
I'm there for it.
You and Jen, man.
We start with the historical look. The first year on that slide is our COVID year, when we had 3,960 students enrolled in the district. That was a 20-year low, really, and now have kind of inched our way back up and ended this year at 4,061. So that's the 5-year look back. This is the 5-year look ahead. So I'll point to, obviously the first line is current year, our magical number of 4,061 on October 1st. It's actually down 21 students by this projection for next year. That is mostly a larger 12th grade class going out, then a kindergarten class coming in, and then some other shaking out of the numbers. You can see that over the 5-year period, it does increase back up by about 130 to 4171. The real jump comes, and I'll point this out when we get to the high school, when you're 3 years from now, and that I can point to directly because we have a really small 9th grade class right now. So I think when that class goes out, that you're going to have a little bit of an increase. So those are the overall numbers. This is the first way we look at it when I do this presentation. So upper left overall. So as I just said, a decrease by 21 and an increase of about 110. Yeah, I'm sorry. I looked at the 110 from current over 5 years. Go to the bottom left is where K6 is. We will decrease by 24 students for next year at the elementary. Believe it or not, when you take, even though it's only 24 students, there could be some cost savings there. When I plug what the projections are on the school-by-school basis and just take our class size policy, it's possible that we could be realizing a savings of 2 elementary teachers, just classroom teachers next year. More to come, but that's where these early numbers, and that it would actually continue to decrease over the next 5 years. Upper right is the middle school, and we were actually, this is the one area that these projections are a little tricky for me, in that I was expecting a bigger decrease at the middle school. They are not showing that to me, so this will have to be closely monitored over the summer. It's a decrease of only 5 students for next year by these projections. I was expecting that to look more like 15 or 20, but it doesn't right now, and we'll take a look at that. And that it would actually be an increase over 5 years, and that it's a negligible increase at the high school. But again, the jump for the high school comes 3 years from now. So here's your elementary look, and you can see what I've provided you is current, year 1 and year 5. And that would be characterized as very flat enrollment in all of those places. The note for Latimer is actually a trend down from where we currently are. And so that would probably leave us with some space opportunities if we didn't do any kind of redistricting. Like we would have some opportunities, as we've already taken advantage of with 2 preschool classrooms there. There could be other opportunities with space if this comes to fruition, because we have, conversely, the space concerns at Squadron haven't gone away, so.
Neil, what was going, sorry, 25, 26 to 29, 30, everyone goes down slightly-ish.
Yeah.
Central goes up. Anything, is that like building in the area, or like, is there anything, it just seems odd that they go up and everyone goes down, and Central's kind of landlocked, if you will?
I'd have to take a closer look at it. I didn't.
Because I would have thought like Latimer with the developments, right?
Right.
You'd see a spike. Central just seems.
Babies in Central.
What'd you say?
Let's have more babies. in
Yeah,
Central.
no, see, NESDEC doesn't know the address. NESDEC doesn't know the addresses
Right,
of
yeah,
words, so.
It may just be like an algorithm where it spits out the numbers.
Yeah. I'll take a closer look, and if there's something notable, I'll have Matt forward it to the board, but I'm not quite sure why
Just
that
like general for that, Neil.
Yeah.
Our benefits, so you don't even have to really look into it. It's just, is this more just, we should look at this as just elementary and let's not get too fine?
Yes, NESDEC is not nearly as good as the vendors.
Yeah, that's fine.
That with that do get live birth data, but you pay to get that data too.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, I was just wondering if it was development related, but if it's not, then don't even worry about it.
Henry James, this is actually just a different visual representation of the down slightly for next year to the number 682. That's a little hard to read on that slide. And then over the course of the 5 years, up to 730. If that number were to come true, we'd have to be talking to Mr. Baker about teaming structures going beyond 3 teams, because you'd have slightly more than 3 teams worth of capacity there. So right now, the number that we're at is perfect for 3 full teams. So if you put 40-something more kids in there, we might have to look at, there's a way to add a 6th section onto a team, like you just make it a bigger team. So that's, we've done that before. We did that when you were at the middle school.
Neil, how many kids can Henry James take for 7th and 8th? What's the run?
Oh, their capacity is quite, they could eat, how many, 800 when you were there, right?
840.
Yeah.
Okay.
So there's plenty of capacity. It's a very large building. And then Simsbury High School, again, the biggest increase coming in that 2028 year, because that would be the first year after the small 9th grade classes graduate. But, certainly manageable numbers. So here's the birth to kindergarten. So this was much talked about in the October 1st report. Here's where I think NASDAQ got it overinflated. You can see, so the first year is COVID year, 2021, okay? And you can see what you're looking at is how close together are the lines. It's the year after that, when if you had a 5-year-old and you were sending them to school, you tended to hold them that year. You're like, I'm not sending them to school in these conditions. We'll wait another year. And so therefore what we ended up with is a lot more kindergartners compared to the births. And I think that year was causing NASDAQ to overinflate it. So in a mutual discussion with the demographer, I got on the phone with the person who runs these for us, and we came to an agreement that we're considering that year an outlier, and we're not using it for the purposes of churning the algorithm. And I think, therefore, we're going to get a far more accurate kindergarten projection. So we'll see. I think I had a good conversation with that person, and we sort of saw eye to eye. So with that said, here's where we are. You're talking about.
I want to explore sort of.
I looked at him.
Having been part of those conversations in the past myself,
I want to
sort of see
I want to keep a good relationship in case I have options later. As you can see from the conclusion here, approximately 25, 27 students per year, an increase over 5 years. But if the trends hold, this is a very manageable growth pattern. It's, this would be considered in other districts very flat. I continue to talk about the K projections have to be really monitored. We have had right now, we're collecting our kindergarten census data, and we have had a year later, by this time we had already had a lot of the September to December birth parents already contacting us. That has not been the case this year. Not at all. So that trend may go down too. Not trend, that new data point. Yeah. So as I said, HJMS will be this most significant pressure point, not from a space standard, but from a teaming standard. And then, but I'm hoping that we can continue to get some relief for Squadron Line with space in other buildings. So that would be my summary of where we are as we enter budget.
Can I ask you about something?
Sure.
As much as I enjoy this presentation every year, it always makes me nervous, right? Because of the unknown, right? This is a snapshot of what we know today, right?
Yeah.
And so I'm going to ask you kind of the impossible question, right? I keep hearing about potentially 500 more units in the south end of town. And what does that I guess what's your confidence level maybe in these numbers, knowing that there may be more developments coming down the?
So that being the largest one, would literally be like across the street from Latimer Lane.
Yeah.
And Latimer Lane would have the most capacity. So I don't lose sleep over that one. If it delivered a similar amount of students as the first Ridge at Talcott project did, we'd have more than enough capacity to control it. The one, getting word that there is potential movement on the one down on Iron Horse Boulevard, which would be about 110 units. That would be zoned for Central School. And Central School has sort of nice class sizes, so I don't worry too much about that one either. There is nothing going on in terms of permits being pulled in this town for single-family housing. There is nothing. There's no new developments happening. If Cambridge Crossing pulls itself out of its financial difficulties, you could have 35 more houses up there.
But we have that pegged for
Already.
Terrifil, correct? Which could
We've already- yeah,
absorb with those projected numbers now.
So
That
I
would work.
think, I mean, I certainly, in the sense that the 3-year to 4-year were fine, it's more the 10-year that you would have to.
Yeah.
And all these demographers, they give you 10-year projections, but they tell you, please don't use them. So I have, privately, if you want to see 10-year, I have it, but I just don't show it publicly.
So Neil, I always do that offline too, but how close, it's like, how close do we really come to those numbers? And then they change, like you said, we're down a little bit, and then, like, how close do we really, because I'm looking at.
Yeah, I mean, I review that in the October 1st report.
Yeah.
They're usually pretty good. Last 2 years, they overinflated them.
So like you said, we're down, like the down that we are now, what is that attributed to, you think?
The just larger 12th grade classes graduating.
Okay.
Then a 330 student 12th grade class leaving and a 270 kindergarten class coming in. Yeah. I mean, so that's always the biggest drive of what's going to change your overall numbers.
So this is like probably one of our smaller classes in a little while. Right.
The 12th grade is 12th grade is okay. 12th grade is 330, I believe. Some of which counts the Farmington Valley. So it's 317 at the high school. It's 317 that will graduate.
I thought they were all around from the October one. They're all around 300.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Get it.
We're good.
But even that COVID line is back up.
Yeah.
Great. You're keeping an eye on that COVID
I know,
class.
because my son is a part of it. And I did send him. I was like, who cares? Go.
Moving on.
All right. HVACs.
Yes, I'm up again, but Mr. Casey is warming up in the bullpen in case you have any questions. So this is a presentation that we are doing because a new statute, not a couple-year-old statute that has to do with HVAC systems and air quality in schools requires a whole bunch of new processes and inspections, and the board, in particular, the statutes say the board must be notified that this work is being done, and that it's available for your inspection if you would like to see it, and that it's available publicly on the website. So I'm going to talk about two different aspects of what this legislation did. And so you will note that in the corner there. This is I'm stealing slides from Shipman and Goodwin on this. Okay, I'm not trying to hide it. Left
You put his name there.
left the Shipman right on there. We did this webinar with them back in February, where they were saying to districts, you've really got to get on top of this because this is a significant amount of work, and you have a January 1st, 2025 deadline. One of the two deadlines on that changed pretty dramatically, and I'll talk about that. But we are here on December 10th because we have completed the work on much of this and are ready to post it, are posting it to our website. So it's two new elements of a Connecticut statute. One is about indoor air quality, regular, proactive assessments of what your practices are in terms of what your custodians and maintenance departments are doing about indoor air quality. And the other is having more to do with inspections of HVAC systems on a regular basis. So, and as the third bullet up there is increased emphasis on submitting these things to the state through the Department of Administrative Services, publishing them on your website so that there's accountability. It was a big push of post-COVID. You'll remember all of the studies about the air quality in schools as we returned to schools. This became a major legislative priority and a big lobbying point for the state teachers union of the CEA. So much of this became, and nobody's against good air quality. I mean, like, we want to do what we can to make the air that we're taking in schools every day as healthy as possible. So there is a certain amount after you've done these things that and you have identified work that might be needed, that there is going to be funding available. There has been some funding available. It's really more of a stick than a carrot, because it's going to be that if you don't do these things, you're no longer eligible for funding. So that's how they're putting the program out there. So IAQ, indoor air quality, having to do not only with fresh air intake, a lot of the way old schools are designed, fresh air intake is windows. So that's important to know. It's certainly about filtration. Are you regularly changing filters in your HVAC systems? What does the cleaning of the HVAC systems look like? And certainly, how are you heating and cooling your buildings, and what does your head custodians and your other personnel know? How do they operate the systems in the building? So here's what the new law was, that you were supposed to do an assessment of your building every 5 years. This now required all schools to use a standard national program from the Environmental Protection Agency called Tools for Schools. What Tools for Schools is really sort of self-monitoring that you do based on best practices in indoor air quality. So are you storing chemicals correctly? How are you, what are you doing about any mold or mildew that might be found? What are you doing about, your system checks and cleaning? And that requires you to sit down as a team, mostly with your head custodian and your other custodians, and go through a series of checklists where it asks you questions about your practices that you have to answer yes or no to. So there's things not only about the HVAC systems, but about like practices in your cafeteria. How are you handling waste disposal? How are you handling pest management? All sorts of things like that are on a checklist basis. So that's what bullet point number 2 there. Oh, let me say this too. The reason why the hearts are on there is because Shipman and Goodwin did this presentation on Valentine's Day. So they thought they were very clever with the hearts.
Yeah.
So it was very corny.
You love it.
The checklists will need to be revisited every year. So, and I'll talk a little bit more about that on the next slide. The HVAC assessment is an inspection that happens. And originally the legislation, and this is why in February they were saying, you got to get on this because you got to have all your schools inspected by January 1st of 2025. The legislature had passed that, and this spring session they realized how completely impossible that was, because there is no way with the number of schools in Connecticut and the number of people licensed to do this work that they could possibly do it. So now that date has been changed to you have to have all of your schools inspected by January 1st, 2030. But you should be doing some along the way. And I'll talk about that. We did do 2 this past summer. So we did 2 of our 7 schools. And then it's about submitting all of these documents to the Department of Administrative Services on forms. So Tools for Schools is, again, this self-monitoring program based on checklists of best practices. We had actually, if you've been in the district a long time, you will remember an old facilities manager named Steve Twitchell. And Steve had actually done some work with Tools for Schools. It was not brand new to our district, but it had sort of gone dormant for us for a while. So the kind of kick in the pants of this legislation to say, no, you have to do it, was revisiting good practice for us. So, and it's about being proactive, so that you're not waiting for people to say, I think the building's making me sick. Like, that's like you've already done your work to inspect and to do that. So the way we handled that is that Jason and Kyle Loveland, our supervisor of maintenance, Carol Mitchell in the business office is handling all the paperwork on this, and myself held 2 meetings in the summer that were attended by the building principal and the head custodian. And we sort of did a similar view of this presentation. And then it was a working session where they started to work on the checklists. Like while we all sat there, what questions do you have? So they all did 3 of the 6 checklists on that day during the summer, one of which involved a walkthrough inspection. There's a checklist about the cafeteria that Bonnie Anderson did for all 7 schools. There's a checklist about pest management. We contract with a pest management company that, so Kyle Loveland was able to, knowing what our pest management program is, answer that checklist. And then there's a checklist about your HVAC equipment. We don't have a large maintenance staff in the district. It's Kyle and 4 other people, but one of those is strictly an HVAC person. So Scott Wheeler and Kyle filled out the remaining checklist. So we had sort of gotten a handle on the checklists by the end of summer. But again, part of this program is about transparency. So, and that you were supposed to have a team that was doing this. Most teams couldn't answer any of these questions, yes or no. It's like custodians and maintenance people who are going to know. So what we asked is, since it seemed like a logical extension, our school safety teams are actually taking on the function of being our Tools for Schools teams. So we've visited all of the school safety teams, and they're looking and discussing the work of the checklist. So that team is the people in the building that are hopefully looking at it and saying, oh, they're taking this seriously. Look, and by and large, we did very well. We have excellent head custodians who are on top of this stuff, and left those 2 meetings in the summer feeling pretty good about where we stood. And if you have to answer a question no or not applicable, the program requires you to put notes in about what you do. So that's how that program works. And we have just we're putting the final touches on that, and we've just loaded them all up to the website today. and we're going to show you that in a moment.
Neil, what makes up the school safety teams? Just like usually it's a combination of.
Yeah, I would say a typical team is an administrator, the head custodian, the lead secretary, a school psychologist, a couple of teachers. There needs to be a special education representative on it. At the high school, security, Mark Kretz, our director of safety and security, sits on all of them. And the fire marshal has a representation on all of them. And then at the and the SRO. So that's pretty. And every school's required to have a parent representative too.
No nursing or anything?
There is. The nurses, I think, are on most of the teams. Yeah.
Thank you.
So again, this is what I talked about with the other slide. The inspection and evaluation of the HVAC system. Again, that date of January 1st, 2025 has been significantly extended. We did Tooten Hills and Tariffville this summer to get the process started. This is not free to bring in somebody who is a mechanical engineer and inspecting your HVAC systems and writing reports. So this is one of those places where budgets get impacted, that they pass a mandate that you have to do this. Even small buildings like Tooten and Tariffville are a $15,000 cost to do an inspection like this. Okay? And so they were out here for 2 or 3 days for each school. They're looking at everything. They're giving a very long report that we're going to post to the website. Nobody but like engineers would understand it. It's about like how much airflow is going through, measured in ways that a layman is not going to understand. But each one also produces a 2-page summary report that says, here are the things we found in that school, ranging from things that are easy to fix, like, hey, we found a broken belt or fan on this unit, you got to fix it, and everything that they've identified as a priority 1, we have already fixed. There are other things that are hard to fix, like recommendations around the heating, the systems, the overall mechanical systems, and major capital dollars if you were going to attack some of those recommendations, and then others that you almost can't do anything about. Like they point out things like the art supply closet has no airflow. And you go, yes, it's because it's the art supply closet. And we don't teach anybody in there. We go in to get art supplies, and then we close the door again. But they're giving you an inspection of what they found. And I'm going to guess in schools that they're going to find places doing these inspections where they are locating
interior
offices and there's no airflow, and you probably shouldn't be doing that. So,
those inspections and the costs that get done, the low-hanging fruit, if you will.
Yeah.
What budget does that come out of?
A budget that there's an HVAC portion of the maintenance budget, and when we get to workshop, you're going to see a request for an increase in that budget.
So,
what's the plan for the rest of the schools? Are you spreading this out?
Yeah, we're going to do the elementaries first. So we're actually going to probably do Central and Squadron next summer. If we do Latimer in that third summer, that would be a year that would be trying to save some cost, because that thing should be perfect. And then we're going to do the high school, the middle school, and the high school, and make that the 5-year rotation. So that's the initial plan. We could change, but so what happens after this is, I've already sort of talked about this. We're going to submit the reporting forms. Again, we make the repairs. Overall, our report. Have you comment about the reports? I mean, there were no surprise findings.
Yeah, there were no surprise findings, and I would say the bulk of times where we would have to say no on a particular question spoke to the nuance of the question. Some of these questions they're about a general topic writ large across a building with lots of rooms. So it's hard to say yes or no sometimes with some of these. One thing was like, are all of your spaces either mechanically ventilated or have windows? And there are schools where you might have a one-person office in the center of the building that does not have that because it was a converted storage facility and turned into an office. And long-term, we would look to move that person out, but we can't say yes on the form because that person's there now. So in the notes section, you'll see a bunch of notes that list out sort of the broader themes behind why we had to say no to some areas. And then I would say the next category up of when we would say no, it was things that are in the priority 3 area where they'll note that certain types of devices were not all labeled in the same way, and we would love to get to that. It may not be at the top of our priority list to spend our time and dollars, but it's on our radar and will happen. But those kinds of things fall into we will get there category. But in the category of, oh my goodness, we really need to fix something terrible, no. All the priority ones were handled. That's good. And as Neil said, the head custodians in the building do an excellent job of keeping the buildings running healthily.
So this is, Ms. Wild is bringing us out to the website to where we have an air quality indicator now, icon, I guess.
I just wanted to say these are temporary icons. Someone as part of their capstone project is creating those for us. They're just not ready yet.
Oh, fun.
Yeah.
That's great.
So here's what it's gonna look like.
Sounds like this.
And it is live, thank you, I'm sorry. So, you're gonna be able to click on your school. So let's do either Tooten or Terrafell so that we can see. So for tools for schools, you're gonna see those are the names of the 6 checklists. And if you click on one, Katie, we could show you. So this is the one where Jason was saying, it's a preponderance of yeses, but there are no's because we can't say yes to every space in. And then what we've done is add some notes at the bottom that if you go to the bottom. So we do provide the school with some notes about this is what we do with our HVAC systems. The filters are changed twice a year. There is regular cleaning. Just because the team should be aware of what's going on there. So that's the tools for schools 6 checklists. And then underneath where you see the 5-year inspection, this is the 2-page summary I was referring to.
There you go.
And in the final column, you can see that we report where the work has already been completed, where the work is pending, and where the work is for information only.
Are you required to update the status? Do you have to go
We
back
will.
to the statute?
We will update it as things happen, but right now we did all the priority 1.
Do you have to update the state?
You have to update the tools for schools checklists annually.
I see.
And the inspection every 5 years.
Hey Neil, a thought, you had mentioned Latimer kind of like jokingly that it should be perfect, but just out of curiosity, is there anything there to keep in mind like warranty wise that if something did pop, we would almost be able to like have it covered and then still get our 5 years checked?
I'm not sure I follow.
So if we wait on Latimer because we say it should be fine and then we go to do it in 3 years and they find something, I'm saying if you were to just do Latimer next, everything would still in theory be under warranty and you'd be good for 5 years with your checklist, right?
No.
Whereas if you found something in 3 years, maybe it's out of warranty. I don't know anything about the warranties, I'm just asking a question.
It's a good point. I just want to note too, for the schools that haven't yet had them, we have when they're scheduled on their page for the HVAC inspection, €5 of course.
But is that out, that, you know, I was look, is that out there now? That's not, it is?
Not live today.
Because we were trying to find it.
Yeah. It's on the front page.
Towards the bottom.
Look, if you go to the home page, we've kind of fixed this up. We've moved news down, and now we actually have 3 new pages: open choice, indoor air quality, and vision of adventure.
So the final step is Carol Mitchell in the business office is going to fill out our forms for reporting to the Department of Administrative Services that are due by January 1st. And Carol was not comfortable answering yes to the question of, has this been presented to the board, until I presented it to the board.
Very good.
Well, I'm glad you did.
So she'll do that by the end.
Appreciate her diligence.
Yeah, she'll do that by the end of the week. And we will meet our January 1st deadline to meet this legislative requirement. So
To the warranty question, I would just say a lot of these are very general and service oriented, so is it being cleaned? That's more of the, I would say, from a warranty standpoint, if anything was actually not working, it would come to our attention long before it came to the checklist attention.
Got it. Yeah, the only thing was when Neil said there were some like quick hit fixes, I wasn't sure if they came out of the inspection.
Yeah, those were things like they did find a belt that was, but it's the kind of thing that you have an in-house person, they go, right, just on any given day, the inspector might come across something that they haven't quite seen yet.
Makes sense. Thanks, Chip.
So robust HVAC conversation.
Yeah.
I appreciate that.
The man of many talents.
And I look forward to your hearts for the next bullet points in
Thank
this
you.
presentation.
Thank you.
And I must say that I'm sure that there are folks in our community will be ecstatic about this.
Absolutely. So,
No, go ahead.
On to the second public audience.
Can I make a comment?
Sure.
I mean, seeing that we have I am remiss because I want to make sure that we thank all of the students that are on line because they gave us beautiful
Very
holiday
good.
cards.
Well done.
And I want to tell any of their parents who might be watching, we talked about them a lot before the meeting started,
Yes, we did.
and we read them all, and we're very thrilled to have them, and I just don't want anyone to think that we weren't appreciating them.
Well done. Thank you for saying. Thank you.
Just saying.
Thank you.
They're fabulous.
Our next board meeting is January 14th because we're running into the holidays. But obviously, I look forward to seeing everybody tomorrow at the tri-board meeting. Yes. Maybe you said 7 o'clock? 7 o'clock.
Jeff, is there anything for us at that?
I make a motion to adjourn.
What's that?
Just going into tribal, just a quick ask of Jeff, is there anything, just listening in kind of deal? Or I guess.
I think there's a presentation that really is trying to set the context of what is a little unique this year, which is a deficit in the grant list, right? And I've also, kind of in our planning meetings, one thing I thought people could use a better understanding of, I guess, were the various reserve sources, what's in them, how and when you're able to deploy them. I thought that was important. So I know all of that'll be discussed. So I think it'll be a pretty good listen and learn. I don't know how much direct guidance we'll get, but I think it'll be a helpful conversation.
Yeah, so functionally, it'll be a Board of Finance presentation.
Yeah.
So, but there's no role.
Our fixed costs are in it.
Yeah, we'll call this, but there's no presentation.
Yeah, it was more like anything kind of going in, listening for things like that. I was listening for everything.
You know, I do think one unique piece is the discussion of the building, the timing we're in now, right? If the timing of the building were different, it wouldn't be caught in the midst of the budget conversation. And I think that it just makes sense now as we open up that it's part of that conversation, right? Because they'll probably, one of the sources or levers they could pull on is the reserves. And is it best to use the reserves for that? Is it best to use the reserves for mill rate relief? I think there are different pieces of the puzzle we'll be talking about, which makes sense.
Really good point.
Yeah. Good. Sure, I believe I heard a motion to adjourn. Huh?
I make a motion to adjourn.
I'll second it.
That's great. Thank you, everybody. Appreciate it.